In the desolate coastal plains of southern Peru, the earth itself hides a secret that remained invisible to the human eye for over 2,000 years, a sprawling gallery of art so massive that it can only be truly seen from the heavens. For centuries, the local people walked over these shallow trenches without ever realizing what lay beneath their feet, mistaking the vast geometric shapes for ancient roads or irrigation canals, blind to the grand design that enveloped them. It wasn't until the 1930s, when commercial aviation began to cross the Peruvian skies, that pilots looked down and saw the impossible. A monkey with a spiral tail, a spider, a hummingbird, and a giant human figure waving to the sky, all etched with terrifying precision into the red rust of the desert floor. The discovery shattered our understanding of pre-Columbian capabilities, forcing us to ask a question that still haunts archaeology today. Why would an ancient culture, lacking flight or balloons, spend centuries constructing a monument that no living human was ever meant to see? As we fly over the plateau today, the silence of the desert is deafening, broken only by the wind that has miraculously preserved these lines for millennia, leaving us to decipher a code written by a vanished people who stared at the stars and decided to draw them on the ground. To understand the lines, we must first understand the hands that carved them. The Nazca people, a civilization that flourished between 100 BC and 800 AD in a landscape that makes Mars look hospitable. Far from being simple, primitive farmers, the Nazca were a complex, stratified society known for their vivid, polychrome pottery and intricate textiles, but also for a darker obsession that permeates their art and culture: headhunting. This was not merely war. It was a ritualistic necessity for a people living on the knife edge of survival, where offering a severed head to the earth might be the only currency valuable enough to buy a year of rain. Isotope analysis has revealed a chilling detail. Many of these victims were not foreign enemies, but members of the local population, suggesting that the Nazca may have sacrificed their own neighbors or kin to appease the forces of nature. Their society eventually collapsed not by conquest, but by eco-suicide. In their desperate expansion, they cut down the sparse Warango forests that held the desert soil together, unleashing catastrophic floods during El Niño events that buried their irrigation canals and scattered their people. The lines, therefore, may be the final, frantic works of a dying culture, a society pushing its artistic and engineering capabilities to the breaking point in a futile attempt to communicate with the forces that were slowly killing them, leaving behind a silent warning about the fragility of civilization in the face of a changing climate. The modern identity of the Nazca lines is inseparable from the woman who dedicated her life to protecting them: Maria Reiche, a German mathematician who arrived in Peru in the 1940s and never left. Known locally as the Lady of the Lines, Reiche spent decades living in a simple adobe hut near the desert, patrolling the pampa with nothing but a broom to sweep away the dust and protect the geoglyphs from cars and vandals. She was the first to propose a unified scientific theory for the lines, arguing that the vast network was actually a gigantic astronomical calendar, a terrestrial mirror of the night sky designed to track the rising and setting of stars, the sun, and the moon. She famously linked the spider figure to the constellation Orion and suggested that the long, straight lines pointed to the solstice sun, allowing the Nazca priests to predict the coming of the seasons and the critical arrival of water. For Reiche, the desert was a blackboard where ancient astronomers calculated the movements of the heavens, using the lines to solve the problem of time itself. She proved that the lines were not random doodles, but a highly sophisticated system of measurement and observation, executed with a mathematical rigor that commands respect. Her image, sweeping the desert floor in the twilight, has become as legendary as the lines themselves, a testament to the power of one person's obsession to save the memory of a lost civilization from being erased by the wheels of progress. One of the most persistent mysteries of Nazca is the engineering itself. How did a people without modern surveying equipment or aerial support create lines that run perfectly straight for miles, deviating by less than a few meters over vast, uneven terrain? The answer lies not in alien technology, but in the ingenious simplicity of their construction method, a technique that relies on basic geometry and the unique geology of the pampa. The desert floor is covered in reddish-brown iron oxide pebbles, But just inches beneath this dark surface lies a layer of bright, lime-rich white soil. By simply removing the top layer of rocks and piling them along the edges, the Nazca created a high-contrast negative image that glows against the dark background. To ensure straightness, experimental archaeology suggests they used a system of 3 stakes. A foreman would sight a line using 2 distinct poles in the distance, directing a third person to place a stake in perfect alignment, repeating the process mile after mile to maintain a true heading across hills and gullies. For the complex animal figures, they likely used small-scale drawings on textiles or ground plots, which were then scaled up using a grid system of ropes and stakes, expanding the coordinates mathematically to giant proportions. This required a high level of social organization and labor, implying that the creation of a geoglyph was a communal event, a sacred act of walking the line, where the process of construction was perhaps more important than the finished product. The fact that they could execute these massive designs without ever seeing the final result is a testament to their abstract thinking and faith, trusting in the geometry to guide their hands as they carved figures that only the gods would ever truly appreciate. In 1968, Swiss author Erich von Däniken ignited a global firestorm with his book Chariots of the Gods, proposing that the Nazca lines were not religious art, but an ancient airfield for extraterrestrial visitors. He focused on the massive, flattened trapezoids, some of which look startlingly like modern runways, arguing that the Nazca people had witnessed alien spacecraft landing and built these strips in a cargo cult attempt to summon the gods back. He pointed to the famous astronaut geoglyph, a humanoid figure with large eyes and a bulbous head, as a literal depiction of a space-suited visitor, turning Nazca into the centerpiece of the ancient astronaut theory. While archaeologists vehemently reject this idea, noting that the soil is soft and would bog down any heavy craft, and that the runways have no approach paths for aircraft, the theory captured the public imagination because it offered a technological answer to an impossible question. It reframed the Nazca lines as functional infrastructure rather than abstract art, tapping into our modern bias that assumes giant, flat surfaces must be for machines. The alien runway theory, despite its lack of evidence, forced science to take a harder look at the trapezoids, which are actually cleared ceremonial spaces where hundreds of people likely gathered to walk, dance, and smash pottery in ritual offerings. However, the sheer visual power of the runway argument remains a staple of pop culture, a reminder that when faced with the inexplicable achievements of the past, we often find it easier to believe in aliens than in the capability of our own ancestors to shape the Earth on a massive scale. If the lines aren't alien runways or star maps, the most accepted modern theory brings the mystery back down to Earth, specifically to the water that lies beneath it. The Nazca region is hyper-arid, receiving less than an inch of rain a year, yet the people survived by tapping into underground aquifers using spiral wells called puquios. Archaeologists like Johann Reinhard argue that the lines are a giant sacred map of this hydrological system, a ritual landscape designed to worship water and fertility in a place where thirst was a constant death sentence. The straight lines often follow the paths of underground water flow or point toward the sacred mountains where the rain clouds gather, effectively connecting the community to the source of life. This theory explains the presence of spondylus shells, tropical seashells found in the Andes, excavated near the lines, suggesting they were used in rain-making rituals to summon the ocean's moisture to the mountains. The animal figures, too, fit this narrative. The spider and the hummingbird are symbols of rain and fertility in Andean mythology, while the monkey is an Amazonian creature associated with the wet jungle. By walking these lines in solemn processions, the Nazca were likely performing a kinetic prayer, treading the path of the water to ensure its flow, turning the entire desert into a living altar. This water cult theory humanizes the Nazca, shifting them from mysterious stargazers to desperate farmers using art as a technology of survival, carving their pleas into the earth in the hope that the mountains would hear them and send the rain before the dust swallowed them whole. Just when we thought we had mapped the Nazca lines, the 21st century brought a technological revolution that rewrote the map entirely. In recent years, researchers from Yamagata University, using AI scanning and low-flying drones, have discovered hundreds of previously unknown geoglyphs that were too faint or too small to be seen by satellites or planes. In 2024 alone, an AI-assisted survey revealed over 303 new figures, doubling the known number of figurative geoglyphs in just 6 months. These new finds are radically different from the classic lines. They are smaller, often carved into hillsides rather than the flat pampa, and depict scenes of human activity, decapitated heads, and strange, domestic animals like cats and camelids. These relief-type geoglyphs are older, dating back to the Paracas culture, the ancestors of the Nazca, suggesting that the tradition of drawing on the land began centuries earlier than we thought and was originally intended to be seen from the ground by people walking the ancient trade paths. The discovery of the massive Nazca cat, a 37-meter-long feline resting on a hill, went viral, proving that the desert still has secrets to yield. The use of AI to analyze shadows and terrain data has cracked the code of the desert, revealing a crowded landscape of forgotten images that hints at a much more populated and active ancient world, where every hill and valley was a canvas for a society that was obsessed with leaving its mark. Ultimately, the Nazca lines stand as a defiant testament to the human need for meaning, a colossal project of faith that consumed the labor of generations in a land that offered them nothing but heat and wind. Whether they are giant astronomical calculators, pathways for ritual processions, maps of underground water, or signals to the gods, their true power lies in their ambiguity, reflecting our own desires back at us from the desert floor. They remind us that the ancients were not primitive, but possessed a different kind of sophistication, one that valued the collective act of creation over the individual and the spiritual utility of art over its visual consumption. The Nazca people may have vanished, their cities buried and their canals dry, but their lines remain, etched so deeply into the consciousness of the planet that they have outlasted the very gods they were meant to please. The mystery of Nazca is not just how they did it, but that they did it, that in the face of an indifferent and hostile environment, they chose to impose order on chaos, drawing lines in the sand that defied the wind, the rain, and time itself, ensuring that even after their voices were silenced, their art would still speak to the stars.